Do you ask unreasonable favors? Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not your girl for that.
If you were asking me for $5,000 because you'd like to buy a boat, that sounds like you need to continue saving to buy your boat, you know?
Sometimes being a listening ear isn't as helpful as like helping me with something tangible, like getting a ride to the airport.
But sometimes it's also like, at what level am I sacrificing myself for this person?
What's the point of having a community
if you can't call on them?
I don't know. Would we schedule our time to go out to eat?
No.
I don't think so.
This is Sistas Declassified, the podcast where
Taylor
and Taryn,
your virtual sisters, share experiences, insights, and of course the juicy secrets that never leave the sister circle.
So shh, listen up. The Declassified convos are starting now.
Welcome back to Sistas Declassified. We're real life sisters who decided to start a podcast instead of going on a trip.
Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so you can get your weekly dose of declassified moments.
You can find us at Sistas Declassified on all platforms. Ooh. Okay. Now that that's all done.
She hates that part.
I really do. But anyway, welcome back. Basically, we're just going to jump right into it today. I found this TikTok that I felt like was kind of relatable and interesting to talk about. But essentially, I'll play it for us so that we can hear it. Hold on, I'm going to put you by the mic.
Radical. Because there's this thing called the small favors economy, and the idea is essentially that in the past, people used to rely on their community, their network, their neighbors for small favors. Things like rides to the airport, things like a cup of sugar, things like borrowing a dress for an event. But now with late stage capitalism, those things all seem like rude for us to ask because we can...
You get the point.
Yeah.
But essentially, she was basically saying that we have decided that we have to do a lot of things for ourselves because it's like wrong to ask people around us for favors or for support or like coordination of activities.
Like it feels like an inconvenience or
like, why would you ask so-and-so to come pick you up when you could call Uber and you have it on your phone? And while that's true, I think it's not really taking into account what's the point of having a community
if you can't like call on them.
Mm-hmm. And not if you can't call them, because I feel like there's a lot of like false platitudes, I guess. That's a big statement. But like people will say like, I'll be there for you, I'm here for you. But then really aren't, because ultimately people expect you to do everything for yourself. Like, how here for me are you if I really can't call you for anything?
If I can only call you to kick it.
Basically, yeah, if I can only call you to kick it, or I guess to be a listening ear. But like sometimes being a listening ear isn't as helpful as like helping me with something tangible, like getting a ride to the airport, or what else? I don't know. What are other things that people maybe used to do as a form of community that people feel like they can't do anymore? Like in that video, she said asking your neighbor for a cup of sugar, or like knocking on the door. I saw like Monet McMichael. I was watching one of her videos and she had knocked on her neighbor's door to borrow a baking sheet. And I was like, I would never. And for various reasons.
Right. I was like, I think it's like social anxiety is probably number one reason, and maybe some rejection for me. But
yeah, those wouldn't be my reasons right away. My first one is just like, I don't know those people, and cleanliness. Yeah. Exactly. Obviously, yeah, I don't know how often people wash their stuff. And obviously if I borrowed it, I can wash it myself. Yeah. And I'm sure she did too. But I don't know. I was just really thinking about what are things people could ask someone else that they end up just doing for themselves? Like, I don't know, maybe like childcare and stuff. I know people have to work.
I thought about childcare, but like, exactly, you have to go to work.
Mm-hmm. So and people's parents are working until they're older. So it's like you can't even rely as much on a grandparent in the same way. Like, I don't know. Granny was not working.
Right.
And Nana was retired by the time I was like
middle school.
Or maybe before. So I know that that's like something that's different. But I guess what else would you ask your friend for? Maybe we can't think of it because we're already so indoctrinated into this capitalism.
I mean, this is definitely taboo, but people ask their friends for money. Like sometimes I know people who have asked their friends for like sizable loans, and to me, a sizable loan, I'm cheap, so it's anything over $100. But I know people who have asked like for thousands of dollars or to hold thousands of dollars, because they needed like to make a down payment for something, or they needed to show proof of income or whatever. And so I know money is a thing some people feel comfortable asking for.
Or like doing people's hair. Maybe that's one. Like, I know a lot of people like to get that family discount or that friend's discount. And I feel like we're in a new society. Well, not new, but it's like, don't ask me for discounts. Like, don't ask me for the handout because this is a business and you want to ask someone else for that. I don't know how I feel about that rhetoric. I get both sides a little bit, where it's like, yes, this is a business and I need to make a living. And so don't take advantage.
Yes.
But also, if you know the person is asking you because they probably don't have the funds to do it otherwise, where does the line come in?
Yeah, I think the self-worth pendulum took a really big swing from like, do it for the team, to don't let people walk all over you, to almost like a self-centered, it's about what works for me, not necessarily what works for my client or for other people.
Yeah.
And so like my ideal client matches me, I think, is in terms of hair.
Right.
I think that's more of the sentiment these days.
I'm gonna charge extra because my bracket of people are gonna pay for it.
Like I can find the customer that is ideal for me. But I think sometimes what folks are missing, at least again with hair, is like, you want a certain caliber of client, but you might not necessarily offer that caliber of amenities and aesthetics. If you're still doing my hair in your living room
with your baby,
right, and stopping to take breaks, like, no, and that's no disrespect. That's how I get my hair done right now, and I love it.
Right,
it totally works fine for me.
But she also charges you a reasonable price,
right? But we also meet each other where we're at, and so I think folks kind of miss that sometimes.
Yeah. And I think our declassified moment for today ultimately is just that our society has become too individualistic, and you should be able to take your friend to the airport or help them with their braids, or I don't know what else, pull up on them if they ran out of sugar.
I agree with you. And I also think, though, there are maybe some reasons as to why folks aren't as inclined to do favors for others. And I do think convenience or inconveniences is the big like pain point.
Definitely.
But sometimes it's also like, at what level am I sacrificing myself for this person? So airport example, depending on where you live, like you might ask somebody who lives 5 minutes from you to take you 15 minutes to the airport. But like, I'm trying to think of an example. Mom lives 25 minutes or 20 minutes from me, right?
On a good day. Backtracking to go to the airport.
Right. And so would I take my mom to the airport if she needed me to? Yes. But me coming from, 15 miles from her to get to her, to then go another 10 miles to the airport and then to go back, that's a smooth little trip for me to take her to the airport. And so she could take an Uber that would take her 15 minutes and cost her $25 versus my $20 gas tank. Right.
But realistically, it doesn't take $20 of your gas. It probably takes about $3. But
maybe
$3 to $4. I don't know, unless you are driving a Jeep. I don't know, but you're not. But I will say, I think you are right. And a point that you're making is that maybe people's communities are more spread out than they used to be. So asking and making that big ask can be, or it can feel like a big ask, even though it's a small task.
Right.
So I get that part. And so I guess, how do you maintain community knowing that you're now further away? Or how do you start to create a community of people who are closer to you, knowing that your extended community is now further away?
I think it starts with prioritizing that. So if that's not a priority for you, it won't be. And I think it also extends to the group that you call your community. So folks have to want to prioritize getting together and like showing up for each other.
Yeah. I guess, are we okay with being individualistic or isolating ourselves? Because ultimately that's what we're doing. We're isolating because we feel like we can't ask, or we feel like it's not a reasonable ask. And the person you're asking also might feel like it's not reasonable
you're
of
right.
you to asking me that. So I feel like that's such a complicated situation. Or how do we start to change our lens of like me doing that extra thing that's going to take me an hour, even though I was just going to be at home anyway doing nothing, or like maybe not nothing, because maybe you are at home doing something productive. But what does that do for my relationships, and what does that do for making people recognize that they can rely on you, or like making you feel like, I don't know, the relationship is reliable?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in previous episodes before. Like, there are friends who I have who I maybe don't talk to regularly, but if they called me and needed me for something, within reason, I could be there, you know? And I think this kind of applies the same way. I think if somebody's asking you, you're typically aware if they've like given some consideration to the ask. Because I think there are certain people in your life who will ask you for anything all the time, and they'll always just take what they can get, versus people who are maybe more thoughtful and like, I've tried 7 things before I got to you.
Right.
So I think for me that plays a role in like my ability to show up, while trying to balance like my own life. Like, is it an inconvenience for me to go an hour to take someone to the airport? It is. Do they ever ask me for anything? Not really. If I asked them for the same thing, would they be there? Yeah. You know, and so I think taking into account the individual relationships with the ask is important.
Definitely. Kind of. I guess one thought that I had was just in terms of having maybe the lens of what community is has shifted, in that you can reach and connect with people in a different way. And so we've shifted from doing small favors or small acts to just having more consistent conversation and check-in. Although I don't know if it's more consistent per se. I don't know what you think, or if it's just that the expectation of others is just different, in that like when I text you, because I know your phone is there, I expect you're gonna get back to me in a reasonable amount of time. Or
yeah, and there's definitely controversy on what a reasonable amount of time is to respond to a message. We do feel like we have, and to a degree we do have instant access to people in ways that we didn't before. But it's a slippery slope too, to think that replaces, you know, that more in-depth, effortful interaction of going somewhere to meet, to have that shared experience of not being able to find anywhere to park at the restaurant, and to talk about it when you get there and sit down and have your drinks or whatever. But
I also think it creates more of that anxious attachment. Like, people, because they know you have a phone, then feel like, oh, why aren't they responding to me? And then that impacts your community, or then makes you feel like you should isolate and do things for yourself because people don't get back to you in a manner that you think is appropriate, or in a timeline that you feel is appropriate. And then you've spiraled and had all these thoughts of like, they're mad at me, they hate me, they don't want to do these things, and all, you know, they're just living their life.
Yeah, expectation management is more difficult, again, when you're not doing it face to face, or when you're not even like a text message versus a phone call. Those feel different, especially when you got your read receipts on, like me. Like, yes, I read your texts and I will get back to you if I didn't open it on accident quickly, or like maybe I don't have anything to say in response to it.
And also, like, maybe people feel as though people just have more resources, so the type of things that you're asking of your community, when you have the resources at your hand,
like there's a service for everything, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Even like, I mean, even just like therapy, right? Like, you don't even have to go to your friend when you have an issue anymore. You just can call your therapist and call it a day. Like,
that's true.
There's just so many reasons that I feel like isolation has turned into like the
easy thing to do.
The low effort, low impact activity. I don't know.
And I think to that end, we've been conditioned to think that we need each other less to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, I think, depending on your, socioeconomic standing, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the ability to buy the things you need and then some, yeah, I don't need anyone to take me to the airport. That's not true. I do. I don't want to pay for it.
If you ever ask me,
I need a ride.
You don't need me to watch Pepper.
I do need you to watch Pepper.
So, but I guess even that is an ask. I know people wouldn't necessarily ask somebody to watch their pet, or would they? Is that something you could seek your community for? Like you asked me, and we also watched Brandon's aunt's dog for a weekend. But would that be a reasonable ask to ask of people, or is it like there's a doggy hotel, go take them there?
I think I feel comfortable asking you and Mom to watch the dog because we all got the dog together, supposedly. So I think you guys don't mind, from what I understand, as long as it's not a major inconvenience.
Mm-hmm.
It works out. But I'm like, would I ask any of my friends? Maybe. But I don't think my friends have interacted with the dog enough for me to feel comfortable that I'd rather pay someone who's liable.
Mm-hmm. I guess.
It's my child.
Yeah. But anyway.
Okay, so now that we've kind of rambled all the thoughts we had on this, let's bring it to you with our Sista Circle questions for this week. So what's, and then we can answer it too.
Mm-hmm.
What's an absolutely unacceptable favor for a friend to ask of you? Like, what's something that would make you say, I love you, but absolutely not?
I mean, there's been times in the past where I was tired or something, and a friend has asked me to drive them somewhere, mm-hmm. and we're all leaving from wherever we were, but they're going the opposite direction of me, and I'm like, I'm ready to go home. I need to go home now.
I am done with this. No more.
So maybe that's more of the answer for the question for me, is not necessarily the ask being unreasonable, but the amount of energy I have to put into that ask. I think that's how I maybe make my decision on whether it's a reasonable thing.
Yeah, and I hate to say I think I agree that my answer is similar. It feels like a cop-out. I was trying to think of something
that's super unreasonable.
I think money-related things can be unreasonable. Like, if I don't have it, I don't have it. And I think for me, there's also maybe a little bit of judgment, and I don't mean that in a harsh way, but mm-hmm. in a, if my funds, energy, effort are going to be used towards something, then I'd want it to be something I also believe in or support. Mm-hmm. And so if you were asking me for $5,000 because you'd like to buy a boat, that sounds like you need to continue saving to buy your boat, Mm-hmm. But if you needed $5,000 to pay your medical bills, me and my husband will discuss it and we will see what we can do for you,
Right.
But I think similarly, it just depends on where I am at to be able to give.
Right. Mm-hmm. I guess if it was things that are silly, things, thinking community versus isolation, if one of my friends wanted to go to see Sexy Red or something and they had nobody to go with, and they're like, come on, Taylor, I really want to go see it. Come with me. No. The answer would be no.
Yeah, I actually just had a conversation with a friend last week who wanted to go to a concert this week. And I was like, I love you, but it's a weekday. It's 3 days before the concert. I have anxiety. I cannot. But I can help you think of people who might be able to go. That's, we can get into planning mode. And they went to the concert. They had a great time, just not with me.
Yeah. So I guess those are kind of things that are kind of community related and not favor related, but just coming together. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those asks are unreasonable to me.
Heavy on the to me.
Yeah. But I guess for me, something that somebody might think is unreasonable is me trying to get them to go on a hike. I'm not doing that. I'm not your girl for that. And I get that a lot. So that's totally fine. But yeah, I think back at you guys, let us know what is things that you feel like people ask you, friends or family, or even acquaintances. Because I think people that are a little bit farther from you, when they ask for things, that's when it feels more unreasonable. So when people maybe even ask, like at work, are there things that people ask? Because that's still a community that you're in. And sometimes those things might feel unreasonable. So just the various areas of life. And let us know what you think.
Or what's an unreasonable question or unreasonable favor you've been asked? I'm curious. Like, people get outrageous.
Or have you reflected personally for yourself? Do you ask unreasonable favors?
And to me, unreasonable means you also wouldn't do it for them either.
Right.
So,
because that's the big part. Yeah.
Consider.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm over here thinking about myself. Okay, y'all. Well, that's it for today. If you have not yet, don't forget to subscribe and to follow us on our social platforms for all of these declassified moments. We will catch you in the next episode.
Bye.